and specializes in guiding women through life's deepest transitions with presence, empathy, and grounded support. Erika is a certified IFS or internal family systems practitioner with over 20 years of experience in trauma healing, somatic work, and breath work. She holds a PhD in sociology and certifications in somatic embodiment, EMDR, Reiki, and transformational breath work, bringing a warm, grounded presence to every healing journey she supports. Amy and Erika, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today. And Amy's going to start us off through this journey of exploring grief. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. So when we invited you to this webinar, we said that we were going to talk about grief out loud, and let's do it. Grief isn't just about death. It's really about loss in many forms. And a lot of the time, we don't even realize we're grieving. We become aware of it when we actually name it. So when someone we love is terminally ill and the phone's ringing and we're getting diagnosis, we're in anticipatory grief. We're anticipating that. And when a relationship ends and we can barely function, that is grief too. And it's not always recognized socially. It's grief for sure. And sometimes when everything's happening all at once, which is a complicated grief. And we all experience COVID. So that is a collective grief. That's when we all come together and we're all grieving as a society. And when losses pile up, like the loss of a job or a pet or finances, that's cumulative grief. So grief has many faces, comes in many shapes and sizes. So at this point, I want to give thought to how it affects us. And sometimes it can be emotional, where we're looking at sadness or anger or guilt, or behavioral, right? Where we feel isolated or we want to isolate, or we're irritable, or we overwork, right? We spend so much time working and we feel the more we work, the more we'll be able to get through this feeling, whatever it might be. And a lot of it ends up being sleepless nights. So I'd like us to take another moment, just like we had a little grounding. Let's just take another moment to sit with ourselves, to internalize, right? So get it into our bodies and feel into it a little bit. And recall a recent loss. And some of you may have shown up right on the heels of that. And take some time to really think it through. And in the chat, give us one word, just how this loss affected you, either emotionally or behaviorally, and what comes up for you right now. Destabilizing. Yeah, say more about that, Abby. A sense of loneliness, hopelessness, agony. Feels like it's pulling at you, the pain. What else? A sense of aloneness. Withdrawal, an overwhelming sadness, heaviness, brain fog. Yeah. So it can show up mentally. What a great point. Thank you, for, Alec, for bringing that up. Yeah. So there's that mental side of it too. And then there's a physical side of it, right? And that sometimes, even with the sleeplessness, it's just like you can't move. It can be paralyzing. So grief shows up in so many ways that sometimes we go back to it again. We don't know. So it's a way of trying to figure out what is this really and how do I move through it? And why might this be happening? And so I'm going to ask Erika to join us now to talk about that a little more.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And thank you for sharing in the chat. It definitely, I think, speaks to what many of us have felt walking through grief. And we live in a culture that tends to be pretty grief phobic. If you're here, you're experiencing what it's like to walk with grief and what that looks like. And we often live in a society and surrounded by people, even if they deeply love us, that may not know how to interact with us or what to say or how to help us navigate when we are holding heavy grief. And like Amy was saying, grief has so many faces. It can be deep loss, which we saw here in the chat, that overwhelming sadness, which can lead us to withdrawing or just feeling that physical, emotional, and mental heaviness that can lead to brain fog. And in that, it can really help to remember, and I'll happily share from my own experience. I've lost my husband and my brother, and definitely relate to those feelings of just overwhelm, sadness, overwhelming aloneness, hopefulness, all of the things. And something that's helped me and that's helped me hold space for clients is remembering that grief isn't something to be fixed. It's really a form of praise in many ways. And I say that as praise of those that we've loved that may no longer be here or maybe going through a really difficult illness. Um, it can also show up as a way of praise, even in navigating difficulties like divorce or job loss, that it can be a praise for a certain time in your life or certain moments. Um, and it really can often help to just remember that we're not moving on, we're really moving with these experiences. These experiences deeply shape us and deeply impact how we continue to show up in our day to day, and really hopefully remind us to have compassion with ourselves, that we are navigating new uncharted territory in all of these losses and all of the grief that it can bring up, that destabilizing force or sense of aloneness, hopefulness, the agony, it's all new. And it deserves, as more openness up here, just to pause and to be with what comes up. Often when feelings are hard, we want to kind of stuff them away, or we may not know how to create space for them. And so I'd invite you to think about, how can I move through this? How can I be with what's coming up? And that's my invitation, hopefully, for you to just sit with that, navigate. How can we create a little bit more space for what is coming up and what you are experiencing? And one thing I'll end this section with is, I want you to think about, I've been trying to fix my grief by. So just see what comes up for you if you have been trying to fix your grief. And maybe even opening up to, what if instead I could, and just see what lands, see what surfaces for you today. And this may change day to day as our grief does. Or maybe in this particular moment, could I be open to thinking about, is my grief teaching me something? And if so, what could that be today? So maybe just taking a moment to sit with any of those that landed for you. If any of you are open to sharing in the chat, that would be wonderful, and totally understand if you don't want to either, whatever feels better for you. as we're waiting, I know for me, something that my grief continues to teach me is about relationships and love. And for me, like I shared, having somebody or people that are no longer here with me physically, it's taught me, how can I still honor those relationships? How can I still extend love? How is this teaching me to expand in love? And thank you, Naveen. My grief is teaching me to learn to rely on myself emotionally, to become emotionally stronger. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Naveen. We definitely learn about ourselves emotionally, and I'll pass it over to Amy as she can stretch more about how that might be showing up for us in our day-to-day.
Thank you so much, Erika. And it's so true that our grief can be teaching us something. It can be becoming aware of something. And Abby's talking about how her grief teaches her impermanence, right? It's not, things aren't permanent, right? They're here, and we can stay in the moment with them and help move through it by realizing our life is to be celebrated and enjoyed too, as we celebrate those who we've lost. And the grief from Alec is more trying to fix my grief by doing a lot of new experiences. Yes, and hoping that one of them will be the turning point. One of them will be the one that moves us through. And one thing Erika said that I'd love us to kind of tap into right now in this moment is that it's learning to be with your grief. Grief will never go away. You will always grieve the loss. And the body remembers, right? Grief is stored in the body. And if it's not expressed, it can lead to illness. It can lead to behavior that's just not who you are. And it can lead to a lot of emotional issues that you don't even understand why you're there. So it's important to let the body remembers what the mind forgets. So it's tapping into that body. And in the body, sometimes we have heaviness, and we talk about grief in body terms. I mean, we'll say things are gut wrenching, or we'll say it happens and it was so heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking when I was with my parent. And for myself, watching my sister who was on life support, and it was heartbreaking to watch. And sometimes you couldn't. You had to turn away, or you get short of breath, or you get choked up. So all of that is body related and body oriented. And it's important that we start to feel into our bodies. So what I would really love to do with you right now is to help you learn how to do a body scan, but in a very different way, in a way that's more somatic based, in a way that allows your body to speak to you. And you have the opportunity to have that kind of a dialogue. So just like we did in our a little mini session, mindful moment, I'd love us to take a few moments here to first finding your feet on the floor and connecting to the support that you have. And we put our feet on the floor to ground us, to realize that gravity has us and it's holding us tight. So feet on the floor. And start to lower your gaze or close your eyes. And I want to start with the top of your head, which is a little bit different than what we might be used to. And allowing all the thoughts and everything to melt away. And let the feelings, right, start to feel into your head and into your forehead. And soften your forehead and let all the words and everything that you're thinking, and the wouldas, the shouldas, everything just start to leave us a little, and get the feeling and bring that feeling. And instead of it moving further down on the outside, bring it in through your eyes, through the eye sockets, through the opening into your body, and then down through your nasal passages, and then down into your chest or anywhere. And sit for a moment and seek this gentle awareness of the inside, from the inside out. And I invite you to connect with the grief that we're feeling in this room right now. So everyone that's spoken to us in the chat has brought something here, or think back to a loss, and think from the inside out. And just let your body talk to you. You have a sensation or an emotion or any feeling in your body. And sit with that. And allow it to be there. No judging. You might feel a tingle, a twinge. And just acknowledge whatever's wanting your attention. Because where we put our attention, it grows. Breathe into it. And then silently ask, whatever that feeling might be, if this area could speak, what would it say? What might it need? What might it be telling you? And acknowledge it. I know you're here. And when it feels right, let it know that you'll be back to uncover more. And now I invite you to open your eyes and just quickly drop in chat what that experience was like for you. I know it was quick, but sometimes we can just grab something that we feel and be able to describe it. Helpful. Release. Yeah. Sometimes just going into the body allows us to release whatever the feeling might be, wherever it might show up. Yeah. So how do we move forward now? How do we continue to move forward? And Erika's going to show us how to reconnect.
Thank you, Amy. I love how Amy took us into the body. Often we're experiencing grief. We can stay in our mind, or something might be ruminating, and it might not feel very intuitive to drop into our body, as Amy just had us do with that quick body scan. But it's a great opportunity to reconnect with yourself from moment to moment. Often when we are going through grief, there's kind of this feeling of being in a void, or there is a void, because there's who you were before the incident, the circumstance, the loss, and then you're kind of in this transition point, and then how will you come out of that on the other side? And so it is a process of reconnecting with who you are. So it's not just the loss, which is already so big and has so much magnitude, but it's really about a sense of losing who you were. And that takes time. And it takes really reconnecting with yourself. And the body is a great gateway that, especially our heart and our belly, if we take that time to just reconnect with what's surfacing for me today. Because as we know, in walking through grief, it's often not just day by day, but moment by moment. There's often different things that can trigger us without us anticipating it or knowing it. It could be a certain smell, a certain song, something that someone asks you in a conversation. And so it's really creating that space to know I am navigating a lot. And it's okay for me to continuously check in with myself and remind myself that I am in kind of this moment of transition, and to really give myself the grace to work through that, and to remember that it's for a reason. It's a lot of life change, a lot for your own mind and body, and spiritually to just connect with. And so something I invite you to think about is to give yourself some space to think about this moment of transition and this void, so to speak. So I grieve because I loved, and you might want to fill that in. Or I grieve because blank mattered. And so just allowing yourself to think about that and to let that soak in, because it just reminds you of the magnitude of what you're carrying and how much is there. And so again, I'll just share, I grieve because I loved. It could be that significant person. It could be a particular time in your life. It could be how things were. And I grieve because that person, the circumstance, the situation, whatever it was, mattered. And often just naming it, even for ourselves, has so much power, just to remind ourselves, like, yes, I need some space, some moments of quiet, some moments of integration, because I'm going through this. And so I invite you, if any of you want to share, I'll share mine. I grieve because I loved David, and I grieve because I loved Frankie, and I grieve because that love is ever present and mattered. And I turn it over to Amy to share a little bit more.
Yeah. So we talk about why we grieve, and I'll share mine. I had a huge life change that I welcomed and that I wanted, but I found myself grieving the life that I had. And I had to stop and give myself permission to move through that and be with it, and learn that even in that grief, and as we can see, we can have joy, and we can come through joy, and we can come with it and hold the grief and the sadness and still have joy. We find that those people who are in most horrific situations find the little glimmer of hope and joy pulls them through. Yes. So Erika, please join and talk a little bit more about these micro moments and building joy. I'd love to get your perspective here.
Yes, thank you, Amy. And as we're talking about grief and seeing how much we are carrying this grief and how it's impacting us in our day-to-day, often it can feel all-consuming. And this is a reminder that small moments of joy can definitely coexist with grief. And I know that when we're deep in it, it can feel like that's not true. And I definitely understand and have been there myself. And that's why I rely on these little micro moments, termed by Deb Dana, called glimmers. They are the opposite of triggers. They're just these little micro moments that can bring in joy. And again, they're called glimmers. And I'll give you an example. So I know for me in the morning, when I'm making my tea and I look out the window, I purposely put a hummingbird feeder there. And hummingbirds remind me of my brother. And so every time I see a hummingbird, it gives me that moment, this little micro moment, because we know hummingbirds are so quick. So there's this little micro moment of feeling myself smiling and feeling that small moment of joy, regardless of what the day might look like or what I might be feeling that day. And so it's just those little moments, whether it's petting your dog, taking that first sip of tea or coffee, noticing the hummingbird. So over time, the consistency of those micro moments have actually been found to bring you more joy and give you a bit more what's called capacity, which is just your ability to withstand and kind of move through all the difficult feelings that we're navigating. I don't know if you want to add to that a bit, Amy, but thank you for letting me share on that.
Yeah. I do want to add to that a little, because sometimes my joy comes, or those little glimmers come in the morning when I go for my walk. And I see the city come to life, and the people, and how they're moving, and the rhythm that happens, and the sounds that, almost like an orchestra, you can hear everyone moving, and it just feels so alive, and it takes me out sometimes of my little triggers and things that I might be dealing with, and in my remembrance. Yeah, and it reminds me not to just, well, it reminds me to be in it and to be with it, and that I don't need to fix anything, and I'm not broke. I just need to look around me and see that I can come through this and feel good about who I am. Yeah, thank you, Erika. So we're going to talk here a little bit about some tiny little thing that makes us smile. We invite you to chat. Tell us what makes you smile, what supports you and helps you move through your emotion. The ocean, the flow, the in and out. I love that ocean, and yeah.
And one small thing I'll add is often when we experience joy, especially at the, I would say, beginning kind of phases of grief, it can induce some guilt of, oh, should I be feeling this way? And should I have this little micro moment of joy? And I'm just here to offer that reminder that you are meant to have joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when we're navigating grief, it can induce some guilt about feeling that. And just a loving, compassionate reminder that you will walk through this grief and it will continue to be a part of you. As Amy said, it doesn't kind of go away. We kind of grow around it. And as we're growing through it, you're definitely invited and allowed and can give yourself as much access to joy as you can possibly, access.
Yeah. And Naveen, thank you for sharing that about your nice meal. I just want to acknowledge that. And when a friend calls, and when someone checks in, and being in community, finding people who love you and who can help you through and be with you, and just knowing someone cares. Yeah.
Well, I know I can feel your care, Amy and Erika. It is so palpable coming through the screen. I just feel this warmth and supportive energy from you both, and I hope others are feeling that as well. So thank you for all that you've shared. I want to open up these last few minutes here for a Q&A. If anyone has specific questions for Erika and Amy, please feel free to share them in the chat. Okay, so Naveen says, regarding breakups, is there a time when it should get a bit better? Either of you would like to respond?
Sure, I'll jump in and then you'll have some words of wisdom as well. Thank you for the question, Naveen. I think that's such an important question about a breakup because that definitely, obviously, will elicit grief. I would say from my own experience in my own and working with clients, I would say for any grief, this kind of stands for any grief component that you're discussing. I don't think there's a particular time frame. I think grief is very personal and is often associated with the relationship and how much of an impact that relationship has had in your life, how long it's been present in your life. And so I would say a recommendation would be to give yourself grace and to know that you are walking through it. And if you're feeling maybe some urgency around, will this just kind of end or go away? Just know that it typically does feel softer as time moves on. Not that, time heals all wounds, so to speak, but time does give you that bandwidth to integrate it, to process your feelings, to start to feel differently about it, and, to heal because your heart is healing. And just to give yourself that time. I often also compare it to a physical ailment, like a broken leg or something. You just need to give yourself some time for things to mend and for you to have a slightly different perspective about it. And I'll shift it over to Amy.
Thank you. Yeah, the timeline. That's the thing about the timeline can vary person to person because everyone grieves differently. In the breakup, it's really living into every day and being with it and allowing yourself to have some space and grace, to feel through it, and to know that, as Erika says, it softens. It gets less and less intense. And as you start to bring in some joyful moments, being in community, being with others, you start to I'm not going to say that you start to avoid, but you just start to heal in a different way. So it's a different kind of medicine, if you will, a different way. It's a different approach than feeling like I need to avoid this. I don't want to think about it. It's to think about it and bring it in and then seek your moments of joy. And books. Erika, do you have any books that you use?
Yeah, I have a couple that come to mind. One is It's Okay That You're Not Okay, by Megan Devine. I think that was one I tend to go back to or use with clients. Another one, personally, again, and that I share with clients that I really like is the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And I like that one because it offers a cross-cultural perspective. I know we started the conversation with saying we live in a pretty grief-phobic society. And so I think it helps to see how other cultures view death and grief. I think that one was particularly helpful. So I think those are the two that come to mind. I know that I have others, but those are the ones that are kind of coming top of mind.
I mean, I have some, but I just can't think of them, but I do have a few podcasts. So if you're into podcasts, I can recommend Anderson Cooper has a couple wonderful podcasts on that. And there are other podcasts on grief that if you go into Apple, you can just look around in there that really bring to life situations and ways forward. And it's always, when I think about how we be with grief, hearing from others how they've survived it, how they've moved through it, how they're with it every single day, I think is another way to look at it and to feel like you're not alone, because we're not. And that's why we have to talk about it loud and proud.
Thank you so much, Amy and Erika, for your thoughtful responses and all of your care. And thank you to all of you who showed up today with your open heart and your vulnerability. And thank you to everyone who shared. You can book Amy and Erika on SAM. wearesam.co. That's our website in the upper right-hand corner there. So please feel free to head on over there. Sign up is free, and you can check out all of the sessions, tools, and resources that we have to offer there. Once again, we appreciate both of our experts for showing up today, for all of your insight and wisdom, and for everyone who joined us. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.